This is not an overnight process. It's going to take a lot of time to change minds of people who are against this idea. And there are going to be those people. It's always like a battle of those who are pro-PLG and those who think it's a terrible idea. It does take time to change opinions and to get everyone on board with the PLG.
Could you share maybe some words of advice for maybe even prospective existing companies who have or are on the path with Amplitude, right? Amplitude is probably a very good use case for companies to look up to, more so because you now have more or less transformed your internal DNA to become hybrid, right? So not just sales-led and a wannabe PLG, you're now PLG plus SLG all working together. So what would you advise companies who are at the same stages as Amplitude, may not necessarily be at the revenue level but more of the intent that they have an SLG motion, they want to also go down market, but are troubled with all of the experiences that you had, the sales compensation issues, the engineering issues, the marketing issues, the leadership not completely buying in, the data not being there, the conversion rates were much smaller. What would you advise these wannabe, I would call them as an enterprise product companies? What should they start from and how should they keep their head high on this particular path of the hybrid growth?
Yeah. Great. So I would say 3 things. First one is what you touched on is be patient and keep your head up because this is not an overnight process. It's going to take a lot of time to change minds of people who are against this idea. And there are going to be those people. It's always like a battle of those who are pro-PLG and those who think it's a terrible idea. It does take time to change opinions and to get everyone on board with the PLG. So that's one. The second one is understanding your value metrics and getting your pricing and packaging right. It's so important. I can't emphasize enough. You have to know why your users upgrade to the next plan. What are your upsell motivators? Like, why do people buy the next plan? So you can structure your pricing and packaging correctly. It's crucial to understand those key value metrics and understand how your users mature with your product and when are they ready to the next step, whether it's usage, feature differentiation, or outcomes. So you have to understand that. And if you have done this poorly, then you might have given too much or you might have given too little on your free plan. Too much would mean that people wouldn't buy the next plan because they have it all. Why would they upgrade and pay? So that's when you give too much. If you give too little, it means that people have not had time to experience the value prop of your product, to get to their aha moment, after which life will never be the same, and to build a habit with your product, which is coming back on a regular basis to your product to solve a specific need. So understanding how your users move up the plans and why they upgrade is essential. If you don't do this right, for example, Miro is very successful with their Teams use case, and their Teams use case is basically Teams would get Miro to wireframe to collaborate in real time and solve those needs in a team, in a company. But then they also have an individual use case. And individual use case, you're not part of a team and you use Miro for brainstorming and your thinking space. So there's no, why would you upgrade as an individual? You just use Miro forever for free. So they're stuck in this free plan and they're not moving up unless they're part of a team. So that is a case of giving too much. I'm not saying Miro should give less, but it is a classic use case of what happens if you don't get it right. In the case of Amplitude, the key value metric is usage. It's monthly tracked users, MTUs, and that's why people upgrade, because they need more usage. They need more monthly tracked users. The secondary value metrics are feature differentiation, which is the custom events and formulas, as well as behavioral cohort. So understanding that this is why people buy and more lets you structure your pricing page in a way that incentivizes people in the right way. And that's why people upgrade. So I would say the second one is understanding those value metric of why people upgrade, and structuring your pricing page accordingly is a key to implementing PLG. And then the third one is, as we discussed, keeping a strong partnership with sales. If your DNA is the sales-led growth and you're trying to layer on PLG on existing and successful SLG, then you have to be transparent of what's coming, as well as be transparent of how it's going to affect them, and basically create clear swim lanes of this is your territory and this is going to be self-serve plan, and give them an overview and idea of this is going to help. This is not going to hurt. This is actually necessary, essential, and this is going to help. Explain how it's going to fill the gap. For example, at Amplitude, going from a 0 to 40K is close to impossible for a pre-seed startup who just raised 200K. Like, they're not going to spend that much. They don't even know if the business is going to work. They haven't gotten to product market fit. So there's a huge gap and we have to do it, and it's not going to take your job away. So explaining why and keeping really strong partnership with them. So 3 things: strong partnership with sales, understanding your value metrics, and be patient and keep your head up.
I think for the listeners, this is a good segue. I know, Katya, you and your team did the marketing for this particular starter segment, right? So startups. Could you tell a little more about what messaging and positioning that you had for the launch plan, somehow letting the startups buy into this? Because otherwise they were not ready to buy your growth plan because A, it was too expensive, and they would not get enough value from starters. So they would drop off and go to your competitors, or that might be. How did you change their perception that, hey, with using Amplitude's Plus plan, let's get you to MVP first? Let's get you to start understanding and analyzing your business a little more than what you have done with maybe what was the positioning, the messaging that you got in?
Yeah.
And maybe you mentioned that a little bit as part of the word of advice to them, but maybe if you could tell a little more towards that as well.
Yeah, great question. So first of all, it's crucial to speak their language. If you're speaking to a startup, you can't speak with enterprise terms, and this is not going to work. So you have to speak their language. You have to get it right. What do they care about? Get in their head and understand what do they care about when they sign up for Amplitude. What do they want? So part of the messaging was that this plan is designed for startups. We even said it in some of our materials, a plan designed for startups, because it's true. You can buy as little as 1K MTUs for $49 to validate your MVP. If you had a weekend ship and you're not sure whether this is going to work, you can just get a 1K usage plan on a Plus plan to validate your idea. You don't have to buy a really expensive plan. As well as the one platform messaging, that it's all one-stop shop. That you get experimentation, you get analytics, and you get customer data platform in one plan. Also, we have our scholarship plan that lets people, the teams who are less than 5 million in fundraising and less than 20 employees, to take advantage of some of our plans for free for a year. So we've already been startup oriented. So it's a great segue to go from scholarship to, let's say, Plus, or from scholarship to growth. But I think the most important is to speak their language of what do they want. They want to get to product market fit. They want to get to $1 million ARR to raise their Series A. They want to get good retention. They want to make sure that people are loving the product. So Amplitude helps you to drive acquisition, retention, and monetization, just speaking their language versus opening up an email with, hope this email finds you well. Have you had this pain? Like that classic emails that no one eats, or like the email with the subject line, quick question. Like all of those are out of the door. And now we should be cool, young, hipster, and speak their language in a way. So does it answer your question?
It does. I think to summarize, get into their heads, sell them what they want to get done rather than sell them a long list of features that you might have within the product. But I think that's a great segue. And we touched upon a lot of things today. But Katya, could you share, how do you keep yourself motivated to get all of these things done? What do you listen to? What do you watch? What do you hear that keeps you up to date on all of these things? I want to close it on a lighter note because there's a lot of information that our listeners probably have to digest. So giving them some segue into some relief on, hey, this is not just, constantly bombarding of infotainment, but there is some more mentorship from Katya as well. So what keeps you motivated?
Keeps me motivated. I guess I can talk about how do I stay up to date with the current growth landscape. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and my latest favorite podcast is Acquired. It's a very long episodes about specific companies. They differentiate with the level of depth and thought that goes and research that goes into each episode. So the example is their latest episode on Hermes. They've spent almost a year researching, because it goes back to 1800s, and they go deep into history and how this all began in the 6th generation of Hermes leaders. It's the level of research and the depth that I love in Acquired podcast. So highly recommend that podcast. If you have a commute to San Francisco to work or wherever you are, that's a great podcast for commute or for your runs. So that's one. Second one is I love Elena Verna's growth newsletter. It's amazing. I really recommend being a paid subscriber because there's a lot of gold in there that you pretty much can cut some years by just listening to the people who've done it and who've done it successfully and repeatedly, right? As Ray Dalio says, she's a believable person. She's done it multiple times successfully. So why wouldn't you learn from her? So I am a paid subscriber. You can become too. And the next one is just a shameless plug. I've recently launched a product-led growth course for those who want to get into growth, but it's hard in the current market. So I partnered with Projector Institute to launch this product-led growth course. It's actually going live in 3 weeks on April 1st. You'll learn PLG frameworks. You'll learn product-led sales. You'll learn how to monetize users, and you'll even launch your own portfolio project for a company that's based here in the Valley. If you are somewhat new to growth, if you're transitioning from a different role to growth, this could be your resource, your main resource.
That's wonderful. By the way, we love Elena Varna's blog post. We recommend from our Substack as well. Right now, it's a one-way love, meaning we love her. She's not loving us back yet. But I'm guessing that's the case with many people as well. Again, thank you so much for your time, Katya. It was a very insightful podcast. To the listeners, if you have any guests, any topics that you would want to, or any use cases that you want to highlight, specifically in the PLG or growth areas, this podcast is for you. Would love to partner up with you to bring together a podcast or a blog together as well. Again, thank you so much for your time. Happy growing, happy thriving.
Happy growing. Thanks, Guru. I really enjoyed our chat.
Thank you so much.